Hi everyone, this is Mindy and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing some watercoloring with reactive inks. Now, I will be using the Make Yourself at Home card kit for April 2023 by Hero Arts, sold exclusively at Joann.com. Watercoloring with reactive inks is a really fun technique that you'll be able to do with some of the contents included in this kit. So first we have the Tulip Bouquet stamp set that has the image there and some sentiments. It also has a coordinating die. Then you're going to be getting 6 sheets of Luxe white watercolor paper. We have the script bold print. And then you're also getting 2 of each of these colors. This is in Peony, Ultra Pink, and Canary cardstock. We also have Lemon Drop reactive ink, Key Lime Fizz, reactive ink, an embossing ink, white satin pearl embossing powder, and then some pink watercolor. The first thing I'm going to start off with is by heat embossing my image. Now, this is the only thing not included in the kit, but it's something I really wanted to do. I have the white watercolor paper cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm stamping my bouquet in VersaFine ink. It's a black ink, it's a pigment ink that stays wet for longer, and it's great for heat embossing. So I am going to sprinkle on some clear embossing powder and then melt that with my heat tool. Now the reason I'm doing this is I wanted to have that black outline of my image, and then the heat embossing will help contain the watercoloring so I don't seep out of the side of the image when I do my watercoloring. So I did a total of 3 panels like this so I can make 3 cards. Now I have a mat off on the side here. I'm going to add a couple drops of water. I'm also going to add a couple drops of this pink liquid watercolor from Hero Arts. And then I'm also going to take that Key Lime Fizz ink cube and I'm going to squish it all over that work surface. So we're going to do watercoloring with that liquid watercolor and our reactive ink. Now the first thing I did was I just took any type of paintbrush or water brush. I got it wet and I'm picking up some of that reactive ink, and you can see how it really colors beautifully on this white watercolor paper. I'm going to start with just a light wash of color just to get this base down. And what I'm going to do is, as I'm watercoloring this and it's drying because I don't have a ton of water on there, I'm going to go back in and add some more color. Now, the thing with watercolor is the more water you add to a color, the lighter it is going to get. So by picking up that green ink that I have smushed on my surface, as long as I'm not adding a ton of more water to it, I can get a little bit of a darker shade to create the look of a shadow and give this image some dimension. Now I'm going to do that same thing with my tulips. Now that liquid watercolor can be a pretty potent color. It's really bright and vibrant if you don't water it down. So depending on how bright you want your flowers to be will depend on how much water you pick up. I have a cup of water off on the side that I clean my water brush in. So I have it wet and I'm mixing it with that liquid watercolor, and once again just going over and giving it a light wash of color. Then I'm going to come back in once that has dried and add some more of that color. Now I'm not adding a ton of water to this, so you can see how dark that color can really be. I also like to keep a paper towel off on the side to kind of dab up if I feel like maybe I picked up too much water with my brush. So every now and then you'll see me kind of pick up some color, maybe dab some of my paintbrush off on the side just to let loose of some of the color and water and help spread that out. So that is my first panel. I'm trying to give you a close-up because I know my light is a little bright right now. So that turned out really well. Now that you can do with the contents of your kit. Now here's another fun thing you can do is mix these colors. So you have Lemon Drop reactive ink in your kit. I smushed that down on my work surface and I'm mixing that with that pink liquid watercolor to create orange. So this is going to be a very nice springy bouquet. I have some red flowers, orange. I put in a yellow there. And then I'm just going to kind of come back in and maybe deepen up those areas. You could also do that with, if you have some colored pencils, you could color over the top to help give some shadows to your flowers. Now, one of the reasons this is working out so well is because you have reactive ink cubes in your kit, which means they react with water and make it great for watercoloring. So I grabbed one from my stash. I think this was Green Apple reactive ink from Hero Arts, and I squished that down on my work surface, and I'm using that to add shadow to my leaves. Really love how that came out because it really does give me some shadow areas and definition to my leaves. So if you have some other reactive inks in your stash, try those out to bring them in and maybe create some different color of tulips. I just pick up a little bit of that darker color, kind of dab off onto my paper towel over there and help spread that color out so it goes from that dark and kind of fades off into the lighter color underneath. Now, one more panel that I wanted to do here. This one's going to be all yellow tulips. I think is very springy and just very happy. But what I'm going to do for shading is I'm going to mix it just a little bit with that pink. I don't want to take it over and turn it into an orange flower. The more water I add to that little line of color, the lighter that color is going to get. So it's going to still give me kind of that shading look. So I'm going to set these off on the side to dry and work on some backgrounds. I'm using that script bold print background from the kit. I just took the foam insert out of my Misty tool because this is a foam mounted red rubber stamp. I placed that in my Misty, and now I have one of the sheets of cardstock that I have cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I placed it over the background. There's a little bit of a repositionable tape on the back so it sticks down to the bottom of my Misty. And then I'm going to prep it with an anti-static powder tool. I'm going to ink up my background with that embossing and watermark ink, stamp that down onto the background, and this doesn't have to be perfectly stamped. I love this script bold print because it's great for maybe you misstamped or didn't apply enough pressure or you want it to have a scattered background. I think this has a lot of wiggle room to it. So I sprinkle on that white pearl satin embossing powder that's included in your kit. And to me, this is kind of a chameleon because see, when it goes on, it kind of has a look of white, but when you melt it and it just takes on a whole different look depending on the color of cardstock you use. So check this out. On that darker pink cardstock, I don't even know how to describe it, almost like a rose color. It's hard to describe, but it's a whole unique look. So each time I do this on my backgrounds, this is the canary. That one, it has more of a watermark look to it. And on the lighter color cardstock, the lighter pink, it does show up a little bit more, kind of has a darker tone to it. So really fun to experiment with that white satin pearl embossing powder. Now for finishing off my cards, I trimmed down all of my panels to 3 1/2 by 5. I thought it would be really cute to make this into a 4-bar note card to give either in a set or to hand out to teachers, things like that. So I already trimmed my panels down and I have a piece of white cardstock that is cut just a little bit smaller, and I'm stamping this smaller sentiment down in the bottom corner. Since I already had lined it up, I can just stamp it down and move my cardstock to the next piece and do all 3 of them at the same time. Now for my flowers, I didn't want a ton of dimension on the front of my card. So instead of foam squares or foam tape, I die cut out that tulip one more time from a heavyweight cardstock and then layered it together with liquid glue. So it's giving me just a little bit of lift, but not so much where it's really bulky. Now I have one note card that I messed up my measurements. It's not quite 3 1/2 by 5. But I'm still using it. I'm not redoing that background. I think it's still so super cute. So I have my 4-bar note card there, cut from the stamped backgrounds, my white panel added in the center, and then my sentiment stamped in the corner. And I could bring in each of my tulips that I colored. And I purposely picked out each tulip set for the color of cardstock background that I used. So I think these smaller size note cards are something really fun to create and are just great to give as gifts or just a little something to put on somebody's desk. So that was using the Make Yourself at Home card kit by Hero Arts, sold exclusively online at Joann.com. Thanks so much for joining me today, and see you again real soon.